And immediately goosebumps. Welcome back to the Charismatic Voice. Today is going to be particularly awesome because we are releasing two videos instead of our regular one. And both of them are going to feature the super scary slash amazing vocalist, master of harsh vocals, Will Ramos. I first heard him with Lorna in To the Hellfire, and it blew me away. It was shocking how much detail he puts into harsh vocals and all of the extra layer of sound. It's amazing, just really extremely amazing. So I'm really excited to get to interview him right after this video and ask him about how he makes all of those really awesome sounds. But this one first is going to be a reaction and analysis to another song from Lorna Shore. This is from the same EP as To the Hellfire. It's actually the third song on it. It's called And I Return to Nothingness. Now, this EP is essentially about life, death, and rebirth. So the first song, To the Hellfire, that was about life. The second song, Of the Abyss, that's about death. And then this song, And I Return to Nothingness, this is about rebirth. So I'm going to be looking for trends in the lyrics to examine how they talk about rebirth. I think that's fascinating. That adds a nice level of complexity that would be really fun to get into. And I hope to be once again totally scared and chilled by Will's voice. Let's get to it. Sorry, I'm going to cut you off for just a bit. I want to talk about the intro because initially the intro didn't sound to me like this was going to be necessarily a metal song. It felt like we were building up for like a AAA blockbuster. And then when we have Will's voice come in with the super scary vocal and also the blast beats there, that was when I got the sense like, oh, this is like epic metal, essentially. Right. The build in the intro was really, really nicely done. I like the way it almost had definitely has an end of days kind of feel going on, which makes sense for that whole theme of rebirth too. You've got the choir in the background. There's also, I think, a church organ, maybe even some bells in there, a synth that sounded maybe even some strings or like string synths. So it definitely. I like the way that it increased and you started getting like more and more sounds added to it. So not only was the dynamic growing, but the whole spectrum of sound was also growing. It was very, very nicely done. And then it was a great way to drop that energy into this initial entrance from Will's voice. So let's go back and listen to that one more time. This is good composition. It's really interesting imagery in the city with the blood washing off too. Oh, that his first phrase, "From the earth we will return." I love the way that he's elongating return. It feels like the act of returning is something that takes a lot of energy. Also, I think I'm really curious about the breath control on return because that's a very long note that he's just held. And it's definitely something I'm going to ask him about in the interview is how does breath control with harsh vocals compare to clean singing, and how does he think about that breath as well? So I'm really curious about that. was very impressed by the long note there. Let's go back just a little bit, catch that long note one more time. It's also very interesting seeing essentially a dichotomy between city and forest in the music videos so far. Wow, so much sound. And immediately goosebumps, like, wow, it's so intricate with the harsh vocal sounds. The way he's using pitch in there is just fascinating to me. The way he's switching between different mechanisms for harsh vocals as well, right? It sounds like he's using combinations of false folds and airy epiglottic folds and maybe some additional rattles on top of that. It's so impressive how he flips back and forth between that. I'm fascinated by how he's choosing essentially that pitch placement, because even though we don't have a pitch like, oh, that was a middle C, there is definitely a pitch center to each of these harsh vocal moments. If you were to pop it into essentially like a spectrum, where you were taking a look at all of the frequencies, you would see that there are areas that are highlighted that are lower and then higher. And instead of like covering just one note, we would see like more of a blur, essentially, which is just fascinating to me, and fascinating by how quickly he can navigate between all of these. It does something emotionally to me, because I don't joke. Like, I get shivers when I'm listening to this. I love the way the high ones remind me of a Nazgul, essentially. I've just rewatched all of the Lord of the Rings extended editions. Yes, I know. It reminds me of a Nazgul, the high-pitched ones especially. Like the fry screams up there. Wow. I'm really impressed by how much enunciation he has in this as well. It's like he's not just doing harsh vocals, he's also rapping at the same time. It's really, really nice. And just hearing all of the mouth shapes going by so quickly, and I feel impressed that he's keeping that separated as well from the harsh vocal mechanisms, that he's essentially triggering, like, all of the sounds for harsh vocals are going to be back here, and then the shaping for vowels are going to be up here. The process for any kind of singing is that you essentially breathe, and then you phonate, and then you shape it in some way. So this, where the harsh vocals are occurring, I'd call that the phonation, essentially. So that's happening in that second step. And then he's adding so much intricate shaping as well, just by how he's moving his mouth, his lips, his tongue, soft palate, like all of those things involved. And it's a lot that's going on and flying by very quickly. It's a lot of coordination. Let's go back a little bit. The drop was really cool in there. I liked that. And I feel like just really floored by all of the different things that the instruments are doing, right? That the blast beats are just like, they feel relentless. It's cool. Wow. Oh, wow. Very intense imagery there. I I keep wondering about his tongue shape. It's I know that's so strange. Everyone probably thinks like, really? Is that what you're thinking about? But a lot of times when you have brighter sounds, the tongue shape is going to be a little higher. And like also that pharyngeal space, like it's all going to be just like a little bit less and the sound is going to be more forward. But then there are times when it sounds like he's got dome in the sound, right? Where there's a lot more depth back there, almost like you have an egg in the back of your throat. You just like, if you expand that space, it can make it a little warmer, a deeper sound essentially. So I keep thinking, like going back and forth between these sounds. And sometimes he has sounds that have elements of both. I'm curious if that was due to layering or if that's if he's essentially able to achieve what I would call chiaroscuro, but within harsh vocals. Uh, but yeah, the tongue shape and essentially the pharyngeal shape as well are things that are really affecting the brightness and the darkness. So if you hear like what sounds like more of like a resonant tube, I would think that there was more space back there, and maybe the tongue and the overall shape of the vocal tract might also be a little bit shorter if it's brighter. So anyhow, yes, I'm thinking about tongue shapes a lot. Let's go back a little bit. You can think about tongue shapes too. That's scary. That's whoa. Yeah. Sometimes it sounds like they're just such guttural sounds. Uh, I relate them to things like burping or vomiting, right? But then you realize, oh, this doesn't feel at all like bad, like, the latter of those two. Um, and actually, I think it might not be, obviously, we're using a different tube from burping, right? Burping is going to be the esophagus, and this is gonna be your trachea, and then above your trachea is where your larynx sits. And yes, so two different tubes entirely, and he's making these sounds all laryngeal level essentially, or a little bit above too in the vocal tract. But the flesh that is vibrating, or like, yeah, the fleshy parts that are vibrating, like sometimes that's cartilage, sometimes it's like slightly less stiff material, but not as easy to vibrate as the vocal folds. Those are very, very easy to vibrate, so that you can create a like that pure tone pitch. But like your false folds are flappy and they won't create a pure tone in the same way the vocal folds will, just because of their anatomy, essentially. So I wonder about like the flapping of different kinds of flesh and cartilage that are in the vocal tract. And I'm actually really curious how that relates to burping, because every now and then there is a sound that somehow is really similar to maybe a low rumbly burp. I'm thinking, oh, I wonder if that flesh is going to be similar to some of the ones that we have in the vocal tract for harsh vocals. So just kind of a curious thing to go along the side there. And sometimes these low ones in particular, it just something about how he's doing it, it makes me want to exhale with it. Like it feels like my stomach is also just rising with these sounds. It's shocking. I feel the amount of emotional kick that a lot of his vocals are having. Okay, I'm gonna go back a little bit. There was a lot to digest in there. I've been really thinking about this dichotomy between the city and the forest, and then also I think kind of in that city vein, we have some digital numbers coming by, like very programmy, and I wonder if it's like something to do with the Matrix in there. But definitely it feels like the rebirth is going to be more related to the forest. But then we had a whole gun battle in there, so I was like, maybe that's wrong. But I wonder if this city is essentially where we finished up last life, and you have your ashes rising phoenix analogy essentially that's happening in the forest. Hopefully, as the video progresses, I'll get a little more clarity on that. Check out also his stance when he's singing. I think it's so interesting to see. He still has like a really, really wide stance, bent legs too. That kind of stance is something you see from singers who are massively supporting their voice. They're often thinking about that lower breast support and just energy up from the floor of a stage as well. So I see him taking that like horse stance, if you will, coined from watching Bruce Dickinson. I see him in that, and I'm curious how he thinks about that and if that is related to breast support. And then his hands are just so expressive, right? You get the sense like that it's got tons of torment in it. Like I always talk about how hands and moving your hands and painting a picture with your hands can help the voice be more expressive. And just take a look at his hands and think about how he's using those to paint this specific terrifying color. It's pretty cool. Let's go back just a little bit more of the touchstone. Yeah, there's that stance. Just like it's so incredible, the highs, the lows, the way he's adding all of these details in, that's amazing to me. I really dig as well it seems like there's a melody that's coming out much more presently in guitar, maybe a little bit of strings in the background as well. And it sounds like we're about to get actually an interesting, maybe an instrumental break here where we get some more melodies as well. It's interesting to have the voice not be the thing that's necessarily carrying the melody and have that be in an instrumental like middle line instead. That's interesting. In this solo, you hear moments where it jumps up really high too, and I feel like that's not not different from what Will is doing sometimes with suddenly low harsh vocals to suddenly high ones. Um, and definitely shows a lot of virtuosic background. Massive respect always for metal musicians in particular. I think that the level of technicality that's demanded for some of these amazing instrumental solos, and also just the continuation and of intense sound throughout songs like this, it's so impressive. The endurance is so impressive. um, I don't think it's any less impressive than uh, a star violinist in a concerto with a huge orchestra. It's really good. Really good. Okay, I'm gonna go back a little bit, enjoy that moment just a little bit more. It's so interesting how the blast beats echo. Huh. Yeah. Notice that section that gave us like it almost gives a little lift in the music. He's using all of the higher harsh vocals there, and a lot of the big boomy lower sounds have also been dropped out. So just really good arrangement to give the ears a little bit of a break, so that when you re-enter with those lower frequencies, they have again an extra oomph to them. Wow. Wow. This high arch vocal that he's holding out is it's so super high for that. It's I'm almost like, whew, I'm curious like what pitch that's centering around to it's wow. Um that seems so high in my mind for that. A lot of times pitch is also controlled by mouth shapes as well. In the case of harsh vocals, and uh, phew, it's so fascinating how to do that at the same time as using the words. And uh, anyhow, I loved these really long slides as well. Oh man, there's so much detail in these. I feel like I could go back and listen to them over and over and just like pick out new details at every single moment. It's crazy. That. That's nuts. Huh. Okay, we're gonna go back and listen to that one more time. That is intense. Oh, right there. Hey, yo, fire. Really, really interesting like outro here. Uh, we're coming back to that choir, lots of strings in there as well. It almost sounds like a piano, but there's like a almost more of a glass element to that instrument. I wonder if they are doing it in sculpture. That's a Logic virtual instrument, essentially, where you can mold different kinds of material into a sound. So yeah, this one, it sounds like a keyboard, but it's not truly a piano. There's some extra elements in there that are really interesting. Sometimes a little bit chimey too. So anyhow, I it it really is wrapping it back up to the beginning of the song. Calling back to that, I think we might even have a couple of the same musical patterns in here, but I think it's all shifted a key higher at this point. Let's go back one more time and catch that. I'm really curious about the imagery too. This it feels like this symbol is very important, and that's where the idea of rebirth maybe is coming in, possibly. Virus uploading is completed. So I wonder if, this digital thing that we've been seeing the whole time, maybe the virus uploading is essentially like the death of a digital age and that the rebirth is the forest afterwards. There's so many possible interpretations. I like it when there's lots of interpretations that we could have. It's fun to guess at what they were actually going for, or if they were really leaving it open for us to make our own interpretation. I'm not sure, but very interesting to see again the juxtaposition between forest and city, and then this digital theme as well. Oof. Mm. Yeah, very violent ending. But we all know that it does end in rebirth. So hopefully there's something, some light at the end of that tunnel. One more time. Whoa. I'm fascinated by how the overall feeling was more of a film score. Uh, I didn't expect that at all. It just shows that they really have a mastery of composition, right? Um, they evoked a lot of different feelings in that, very strong imagery, of course. I am totally mesmerized by Will's voice and his ability to eke so many different kinds of sounds out without even using his true vocal folds. That's it's just fascinating. I'm so excited to ask him questions. I have so many questions too. So I do hope that all of you will stay tuned for the interview that's going to be happening right after this. I'm just so glad that he even said yes, because it's going to be so much fun to talk about that vocal technique. I'll be asking him about things like breath control and stance and pitch control and where different locations are being activated for sounds. Anyhow, I'm really, really excited for that, obviously. Thank you to everybody who recommended this and got us on the Lorna Shore track in the first place. This has been an amazing experience for me to really open my eyes, and I'm very excited to continue it and learn a lot more about it. So just thank you so much. If you want to continue making recommendations, the best place to do that is in the comments of videos. That's where we look for it and track it the most. You can also find me here on YouTube every Monday, Tuesday, and Friday at 8 a.m. Arizona time. And you can find me on Patreon. And you can also find my courses about singing and music in general at thecharismaticvoice.com. I'll see you somewhere soon.